stars remain, calling out through blood and pain. Torn apart but not yet broken, names unspoken, bonds unshaken.
Sensible Hysteria. Book 1. Caper La Verte. Intermission. The Wolves at the Door.
Now, dear listeners, as we once again pause to reflect on the unfolding events, I must ask, what is it that truly shapes the course of history? Is it the grand machinations of empires, the whispered plots of rulers and kings? Or is it the desperate, reckless choices of those who, for a fleeting moment, believe themselves beyond consequence? Ang, Kohga, and Brand, once soaring high on the wreckage of the hen house, now find themselves marked, hunted, the thrill of victory fading into the creeping dread of pursuit. It seems their actions have drawn the attention of a man, or rather, something far worse. An elf, relentless and methodical, moves against them like a predator tracking wounded prey. Who he is and why he hunts them remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the Second Corps has never been kind to those who become its prey. Meanwhile, in the city's underbelly, Damas Barlays moves with calculated intent, weaving himself deeper into the web of Olduvai's criminal elite. Deals are being struck, whispers exchanged in the back rooms of smoke-filled dens, the kind of arrangements that shift the balance of power in ways that most will not see until it is far too late. But to truly understand the weight of such dealings, one must first understand the gangs of Olduvai, the silent architects of its unseen war. For while the Shori Empire prides itself on law, order, and progress, beneath the gleaming towers and floating streets lies a far grittier truth. The city is not ruled solely by its nobles, its scholars, or its high-born officials. No, lurking beneath the surface, hidden in the shadows of both First and Second Corps alike, is another power entirely: the gangs. The silent lords of Olduvai. Crime in Olduvai is not the disorderly chaos one might expect from lesser cities. No, the criminal world here is structured, ordered, woven into the very foundation of society itself. Gangs rise and fall, just as dynasties do, and their power extends far beyond the back alleys and gambling dens where they first took root. They control trade, enforce law where the city refuses to, and wage their own quiet wars beneath the feet of those who believe themselves beyond such concerns. Some are subtle in their influence, while others are as blatant as a dagger to the throat. All are dangerous. Among the most feared of Olduvai's factions, the Thana Glacier is not a gang in the traditional sense, but a force of nature. Led by the enigmatic Kopku Deemer, they operate not through simple brutality, but through absolute control. There are whispers of frozen bodies left as messages, of deals made and then upheld with ruthless precision. Their reach extends beyond mere crime. They move in politics, in trade, in the flow of goods and people throughout the city. If Damas is making deals in Olduvai, one would do well to question whether the glacier has a hand in his affairs. Then there are the Boogies, a name that sends shivers down the spines of even the most hardened criminals. They are not concerned with wealth or influence, but with suffering. They do not fight for power in the city's hierarchy. They exist beneath it, feeding off misery like parasites in the night. They take what they wish. They play games with lives, and where they go, fear follows. To cross paths with the Boogies is to risk becoming a name whispered in the dark, a cautionary tale for those foolish enough to wander where they should not. Deep in the Cumulus district, a gang exists that does not rely on shadows to conceal their brutality. The Windstalks are predators in plain sight. Their leader, known only as Whisper, ruling both her gang and the underground fight scene with an iron fist. She is a legend in the clandestine gladiatorial circles, where she delivers brutal, hand-to-hand combat victories with terrifying efficiency. Her chilling signature, finishing off opponents with a whisper, has earned her both fear and respect. Under Whisper's leadership, the Windstalks thrive on racketeering, blackmail, and theft. They do not simply steal or extort. They dismantle lives, unearthing secrets and turning them into weapons sharper than any blade. They move like the wind itself, striking when least expected, leaving behind nothing but ruin and regret. If Damas is making deals, if Aang, Koga, and Brand are in hiding, one must wonder if the Windstalks have already caught their scent. And then, dear listeners, there is the Sheer. Unlike the other gangs, who thrive on wealth and influence, the Sheer answers to something far darker. Their leader, a necromancer known only as the Shearer, wields power over both the living and the dead. His very presence enough to instill unwavering loyalty or paralyzing terror. To cross the Sheer is to risk not only death, but something far worse. A fate where even the grave offers no escape. It is whispered that the Sheer controls the flow of mumia, a drug said to have supernatural properties, flooding the streets of Ulduvai with substances that promise visions, power, or something beyond mortal comprehension. They do not operate under codes of honor, nor are they bound by the structured dealings of the Thana Glacier. The Shearer's will is law, and that law is ever-changing. While their influence stretches into the second core, their strongest presence lies deeper, in the third core, where the city's decay festers, and the boundaries between life and death grow thin. The stage is set. It is in this landscape that our story now unfolds, where Damas walks among the wolves, where Aang, Koga, and Brand find themselves hunted in a city that does not forgive. And this, dear listeners, is but the beginning. The heist at the hen house was merely a prelude. The deals being struck now, the names being whispered in darkened corridors, they are but the first movements of something far larger, something that will shake Ulduvai to its very core. Mark my words, the blood spilled so far is nothing compared to what is yet to come.
Chapter 8. Wounds, Wagers, and Watchful Eyes.
The broken wing was as seedy as ever, a low-lit hole in the wall, its cracked wooden beams sagging with age, the air thick with the stench of cheap rum, stale smoke, and bad decisions. The clientele kept to themselves, cutthroats, ex-sailors, gamblers down on their luck. But none of them looked twice when Aang, Brand, and Koga stepped through the door. They weren't out of place here, not tonight. Brand was grinning, all energy and excitement, still riding the high of the night's insanity. He strode to their usual corner booth, boots tracking grime onto the warped floor, and dropped into his chair with a satisfied sigh. His coat was disheveled, his rapier hanging lazily at his side, but none of that seemed to bother him. He tossed something onto the table with a thump. A soul contract, marked with a bloody handprint.
Now tell me that wasn't the best damn job we've ever pulled.
Brand leaned back, stretching his arms behind his head.
The thrill, the fire, the screaming, I mean perfection. And let's not forget my personal victory.
His grin widened as he tapped a finger against his temple.
You'll never believe whose bed I found myself in last night.
Aang exhaled heavily, rubbing his temples before slumping into the seat across from him. He was tired, sore, every muscle in his body screaming at him to just shut up and drink something strong. But Brand's shit-eating grin told him he wasn't about to get that peace. Aang didn't respond, didn't need to. Brand's grin sharpened.
Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're not even a little curious.
He drummed his fingers on the table before answering himself, far too pleased.
North Stone Call.
Ang groaned, leaning his head back against the booth.
You slept with our Mark?
Brand held a hand to his chest in mock offense.
I'll have you know it was a tactical decision. I was very thorough in extracting information. And besides,
His grin turned wicked.
she was very enthusiastic about the deal.
Ang wasn't taking the bait. His mind drifted unwillingly to the dare he had danced with the night before. Strong hands, sharp eyes, a whisper of danger in her step. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but the soreness in his body betrayed the more physical nature of their encounter. Brand caught it instantly.
Oh,
Brand's eyebrows shot up.
so that's why you're walking like you got kicked by a horse.
He leaned in, devilish delight lighting up his face.
Come on, tell me, was it wild? Do Derry like it?
Shut up, Brand.
Brand laughed, satisfied. Across from them, Koga snapped.
Are you two serious?
His voice cut through the air, startling even a few of the nearby patrons. He wasn't seated. He was still tending to his wounds, a bloody rag in one hand as he dabbed at a fresh cut on his arm. His coat was still bloody, his face still carrying the exhaustion of being shot twice the night before. Koga slammed his fist on the table.
You two are out here comparing conquests while we have bigger problems.
Brand held up a finger.
Technically, I was boasting, not comparing.
Koga's eye twitched. He turned, scanning the room, before his voice boomed toward the bar.
Grom!
The half-orc bartender, broad and scarred from a lifetime of brawls, was already watching them warily from behind the counter. He didn't flinch at Koga's outburst, just sighed and wiped down a mug with an already dirty rag.
Damas isn't here.
He said flatly, not even waiting for the demand. Koga narrowed his eyes.
We need to talk. Now.
Grom exhaled through his nose, setting the mug down with a clunk.
I told you, Damas isn't back yet.
Koga's fists clenched.
Then where the fuck is he?
Grom's expression didn't change, but there was something guarded behind his eyes. That wasn't a good sign. Brand and Aang finally sobered, their previous amusement draining at the shift in tone. The job had been a success, but unfinished business still lingered. And if Damas was missing, then shit was about to get a lot more complicated. Grom let out a slow, measured breath, his gaze flicking between the three of them before settling on Koga's seething expression. He reached for another glass, pouring something dark and strong, then set it down with an air of finality.
Damas will be back tomorrow.
He said simply.
You'll talk to him then.
Koga's hands clenched into fists, barely restraining his frustration.
We don't have time to waste.
You have plenty of time.
Grom cut in, leveling him with a steady look.
The last phase of your plan isn't until tomorrow, right?
His tone was almost bored, but there was something heavy underneath it.
So take today to recover, drink, sleep, patch yourselves up, because if you go into tomorrow half dead, you're going to get yourselves killed.
Brand sighed, leaning back again, the tension rolling off him like water.
See, even Grom agrees, we earned a break.
He waved a lazy hand.
And besides, someone has to celebrate my glorious success.
Ang groaned, slouching deeper into his seat.
If you bring up North again, I will throw you through that wall.
Koga was still simmering, jaw tight, but Grom ignored him. Instead, the half-orc reached across the table, plucking the soul contract from where it still sat, its bloody handprint glaring against the parchment.
I'll take this to the back.
Grom said, voice low and unreadable.
Damas will want to see it when he gets in.
No one argued as he turned, disappearing behind the bar with the contract tucked under his arm. Koga waited until he was out of sight, before slamming his fist onto the table again.
This whole job is bullshit.
Brand sighed dramatically.
Here we go.
Koga ignored him, turning his glare on both of them.
I need to know. Do you two really think this job is worth it?
Aang exhaled, rubbing his temple.
We're in it already, Koga.
That's not an answer.
Brand was still grinning, but there was a sharper edge to it now.
It's a payday. A big one. That should be answer enough.
Koga scoffed, shaking his head.
We've busted our asses for this, nearly died, and for what? We don't even know if we can trust Damas, if he even thinks about crossing us.
He leaned forward, voice dropping into something dark and certain.
I'll kill him.
Aang and Brand exchanged a glance. Brand, still leaning back in his chair, shrugged.
Well, that's the spirit.
Aang, still sore and exhausted, finally pushed his drink aside and leaned forward, fixing Koga with a steady gaze.
So,
He said, voice low.
mind telling us why that red-eyed bastard was so eager to kill you?
Koga, still simmering from his earlier outburst, let out a sharp breath and ran a hand through his matted, blood-stained hair.
Hell if I know. He was screaming something about taking Herod Barlays or whatever.
He gestured vaguely, expression darkening.
Like I had anything to do with that mess.
Brand perked up immediately, tilting his head with an amused smirk.
Well, did you?
Koga turned on him so fast that Aang nearly choked on his own drink.
Are you a moron? You were with me the whole damn night.
Brand snickered, holding up his hands in surrender.
Doesn't mean you didn't sneak off for a little rendezvous.
Koga groaned, rubbing his temples.
You're insufferable.
Aang, unfazed, drummed his fingers on the table.
If he was yelling about Herod, that means she's somehow wrapped up in all this, and if we don't know why,
He exhaled slowly.
that's a problem.
That's a problem?
Koga snapped, eyes flashing.
No, this is a problem. That damned clown doll won't stop following me.
Brand paused, glancing at Aang before looking back at Koga.
Wait, it's following you?
Yes,
Koga gestured wildly.
I ditched it at the docks, but it showed up again when I was heading here. Just standing there in the alleyway, staring at me. It's like it knows where I am at all times.
His voice lowered into something almost unnerved.
I think it wants me to tell it to kill something.
Brand let out a low whistle.
Okay, that's creepy.
You're damn right it's creepy. And you two are out here laughing about your little nighttime conquests while I'm out here being hunted by a knife-happy doll.
Aang exhaled.
We'll deal with it tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
Koga threw up his hands.
we're just gonna ignore the fact that there's a homicidal clown doll that somehow has magic tracking powers.
Brand wasn't listening. He had been watching Koga rant, eyes slowly narrowing. Something sparkled in the dim light of the bar. Brand tilted his head, smirking.
Koga, is that an emerald necklace?
Koga froze. The amusement dropped from Brand's face, replaced by mock disbelief.
Did you seriously?
He pointed.
Did you steal that from the safe room?
Aang, who had been sipping his drink, finally noticed. His eyes flicked to the ornate emerald necklace resting perfectly against Koga's collarbone, gleaming in the dim light like it belonged there. Koga's expression turned murderous.
I'm not doing this right now.
He growled. Brand grinned, leaning forward.
Oh, this is rich.
Koga grabbed his coat, shoving away from the table with enough force to nearly tip the chair over.
I will see you both tomorrow.
And before either of them could get another word in, he was gone, pushing his way through the bar and out into the night, leaving Aang and Brand alone at the table. There was a beat of silence. Then Brand, still grinning, leaned back with a satisfied exhale.
Man, he's gonna be so pissed when that necklace turns out to be cursed.
Aang sighed, rubbing his temple.
Chapter 9. The Price of Divinity.
The broken wing felt no different than the night before. The air was still thick with smoke, the wood still warped from years of spilled drinks and bad decisions, and the patrons still kept their heads down, too used to shady dealings to care about 3 familiar faces stepping inside. Aang, Brand, and Koga took their usual table, though none of them were at their best. Brand, as expected, was brimming with energy, lounging comfortably with a self-satisfied smirk. He rapped his knuckles against the table and grinned at Koga.
You look fantastic, Koga. Feeling well rested?
Koga, sitting stiffly across from him, glared, eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. He had the unmistakable look of a man who had spent the night on edge, watching doorways, checking behind every shadow.
Oh, yeah.
Koga deadpanned, voice dripping with sarcasm.
Got a full 8 hours. Woke up refreshed, feeling like a new man.
He slumped back in his chair, rubbing his temples.
Hard to sleep when a crazy red-eyed bastard and a possessed clown doll are out there hunting me.
Brand chuckled, clearly having a great time at Koga's expense.
Well, look at the bright side. You weren't stabbed in your sleep.
Yet,
Koga muttered. Aang, sitting beside them, rolled his shoulders with a pained grimace. Every muscle still ached from the previous night's wreck, and he was tired. But more than that, he was annoyed, because he knew Brand was waiting for his moment. He braced for it, and then,
So, Aang,
Brand said casually, stirring his drink.
sleep well?
Aang tensed.
Fine.
Brand's grin sharpened.
Nothing eventful?
Aang sighed, rubbing his temple.
Brand,
Brand's chair creaked as he leaned in, voice mockingly thoughtful.
You seem a little stiff, little sore, little, dare I say, worn out.
Aang gritted his teeth. Brand beamed.
Wouldn't happen to be because you had another little midnight rendezvous with your favorite Derhi, would it?
Aang groaned.
shut up, Brand.
Brand just laughed, utterly delighted. Koga, despite his exhaustion, just shook his head.
you two are children.
Before the banter could go any further, a smooth, serpentine voice cut through the air.
Ah, my favorite trio.
Damas had arrived. He moved like a whisper, his presence oily but deliberate, his smile always 2 steps ahead of his words. He was cleanly dressed, as always, in the kind of polished attire that said, "I am successful," but his narrow eyes held a glint that said, "I am dangerous." He stopped at their table, clasping his hands together in mock delight.
I trust you all have recovered.
The 3 exchanged a look. None of them fully trusted Damas. Not now, not ever. But now that they were in the final stage of the plan, that distrust had tripled. Damas noticed. He always noticed. His smirk barely faltered.
Ah,
He purred.
I see you've all taken some extra time to think things over.
His fingers tapped against the table.
Good. That means you're smart.
He leaned in slightly.
So,
He murmured, voice dripping with charm.
shall we discuss the final stage?
The room felt different now. Damas had a way of shifting the air, bending it around himself like a spider spinning silk. His words always slithered in smooth, calculated, never rushed, never uncertain. He was a man who knew the weight of what he offered, and more importantly, the weight of what he withheld. And right now, Aang, Brand, and Koga were acutely aware of just how much he wasn't saying. Aang folded his arms, eyes leveling on Damas.
You keep talking about this final stage like it's bigger than anything we've done before.
His voice was tired, skeptical.
But we already hit the hen house. We saw what was in that safe.
Brand nodded, leaning forward, his usual grin tempered with something more serious.
That place had more money than we could spend in 5 lifetimes. You're telling us there's more?
Koga, seated stiffly between them, barely spoke, but his fingers twitched toward his emerald necklace, rubbing the gem between his fingers as if reassuring himself of what he had already taken. Damas took the scrutiny with grace, letting the tension sit for a moment before offering them a placating smile.
Ah,
He exhaled, spreading his hands.
I understand the hesitation.
His gaze flicked toward the necklace at Koga's throat, and a knowing glint passed through his eyes before he looked away.
I would be asking the same questions were I in your position.
Brand huffed.
So why don't you answer them?
Damas tilted his head, smile never quite fading.
Because you're thinking too small.
Ang frowned.
Small. We literally crashed a floating casino. How much bigger does this get?
Damas's smirk deepened. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice lowering just enough to draw them in.
Tell me, he said smoothly, what do you three know about the gods?
The three of them exchanged glances, the shift in conversation throwing them off balance. Koga's eyes narrowed.
They exist. They fight. They mess with mortals when they feel like it.
Brand leaned back, shrugging.
Depends on who you ask. Some say they shape everything, others think they don't give a shit.
Ang sighed.
And some people think they can become one.
Damas's smile sharpened.
Ah, now we're getting somewhere.
His fingers drummed against the table.
And tell me, what do you know about making a god?
The silence between them was heavy. Then Brand spoke, thoughtful.
The Starstone, right? The test. If you pass, you ascend. Becomes something more.
Damas nodded, but there was something dismissive in the way he did it.
Yes, that's one way, an old way, but that's not what I'm after.
He let his words hang, watching them, letting them lean in, waiting for the hook. Then he said it.
There is someone in the maximum security prison,
Damas said, his voice lowering into something almost reverent.
a being that is more than just a person. It is a vessel, a seed of something greater.
His fingers curled slightly, as if holding something delicate between them.
The powers in this city
He continued.
are building a god.
The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Ang, Brand, and Koga stared, the weight of what he had just said settling over them. Ang was the first to find his voice.
You're saying the people in charge? They're making a god?
Damas nodded.
An artificial god.
He exhaled, his smile slow and knowing.
And my goal is simple.
His voice dropped into a whisper.
I intend to seize it, or at the very least, free it.
Another beat of silence. Koga's jaw was tight, suspicion and exhaustion warring in his expression. Brand looked intrigued, like he had just been dealt the most exciting hand of his life. Ang, for his part, was still processing. Then Damas leaned back, smoothing his sleeves with calculated nonchalance.
And if we succeed,
He continued,
I am leaving everything I have, contracts, wealth, contacts, resources, to you three.
Koga blinked.
Everything.
Damas smirked.
Everything.
Ang exhaled slowly. Brand chuckled.
Now that's a hell of a payday.
Ang drummed his fingers on the table, a slow smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth.
I have to admit, I do like the sound of everything.
Koga, still absently running a thumb over the emerald necklace, wasn't as quick to agree. His eyes narrowed, studying Damas as if trying to pick apart the truth from the performance. Damas sat comfortably, his serpent-like smile unwavering. But there was something in his posture, something just a little too rehearsed. Brand stretched his arms behind his head.
All right, fine. We're in.
Ang nodded, though his gaze stayed sharp.
But let's be clear, Damas. If you're holding anything back,
His voice was low, tired, but deadly certain.
we'll find out.
Koga leaned forward, eyes dark.
And if we don't like what we find,
He let the question hang. Damas didn't so much as flinch. Instead, he chuckled, smoothing out an imaginary wrinkle in his sleeve.
Oh, my friend,
He purred.
I wouldn't dream of keeping secrets from you.
None of them believed him. But for now, they'd play along.
Skyborn kingdom built on high, but rust and ruin stain the sky. Chains are breaking, ghosts arise, whispers carve through shattered minds. Watch the fall, hear the cries. Truth is lost and it'll divide.